honestly, this book really just comes off as like an old grouchy man kind of being like, back in my day, and also like, you're always on that damn phone. With 253,147 votes. Sorry, that number shocked me so much that I forgot how to say numbers. Literally, the plot just devolves into, oh my God, things are finally maybe going good, except something bad happens. And then, oh my God, wait, he's actually alive and not dead, but he has a wife. And then, oh my God, I'm actually maybe like doing better after I like crashed my car, but like then something worse happened. Hello, my friends. It is finally the time. Not really finally, actually. I did pretty good cranking these books out, okay? This is my February video, and yes, we are here to talk about the Goodreads Choice winners. I honestly can't believe that I was able to read these this quickly, especially considering that I am doing school full time now. So I'm kind of proud of myself. I am proud of myself, and I am excited to talk about these. This was a very strange year. But before I get into that, a couple things. I am recovering from a very a very bad bout of the flu, unfortunately. So I might cough a little, I might sneeze a little, just please bear with me. It was awful, and I am happy to be at least well enough to have this conversation with y'all today. I also want to say thank you so much for 100 subscribers. That is just wild. That is so crazy to hit that in the first month of like the second year of my channel is very cool. So happy, thankful, and I love doing these videos. And please, if you watch me consistently on YouTube but don't connect with me on Instagram, I would love if you would try to connect with me on Instagram. Because my New Year's resolution was to pay more attention to my book account, and I am already failing at that. And it would really encourage me if I would find a little bit more community on there or through there. So in my description, always, there's going to be links to my social media. Please check that out. And then without further ado, because this is typically a longer video, I am Nova, and this is Off My Rocker reading. Lordy. This year, what even was this? I love the Goodreads Choice Awards. I love a fun little, like, not important, silly little bookish awards moment to, like, take my mind off of anything real that is going on in life. I love engaging with the Goodreads Awards, but I will not lie, I was pretty disappointed by this year. I feel like I've seen a lot of other people kind of say as well that this year was a bit of a dud. And I would have to agree with that sentiment. When I was kind of trying to pinpoint how I felt about the winners and everything from this year, I think that the best way for me to explain it is there was just such a lack of diversity in the winners. And when I say diversity, I do not mean the insane way that our culture is talking about that right now. I mean more so that it felt like everything that you would have expected to win won. And that's like in a derogatory way. Like every author that you would have expected to win won because they're like a TikTok famous author or whatever, right? Or every book that's cover you saw everywhere in different marketing ploys, that's the thing that won. And I don't like that. I understand that this is something that people are voting on in a very widespread, like mainstream sense. So it makes sense why there are so many repeat authors who win every time. But I also just hate it. I wish that there was more variance in what we see winning each year. Because unfortunately you get years like this that I just think were very boring. There was no surprises. There was also no like really big book that like spans genres and that like people just kind of universally loved. Like I kind of think of Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow when I think of a book that's like everybody just loved this book. It deserved to win. I just felt like it was a bit of a flop. But all that being said, I do still love talking about them, and I did read all of them. So I want to discuss. As I did last year, I want to kind of tackle the more boring categories first, the categories that we may not care as much about as like more fiction readers. Without further ado, I think we just get right into it. I will also, just like last year, be telling you at the end whether or not I think that this book deserved to win based on a variety of factors. So, yeah, I think we just have to jump in. Please let me know as we're going or after if you agree with my opinions, what you voted for. If you agree with my picks, I will let you know what I voted for. I would just love to know. Starting off with history and biography, because this is a category that I feel like people are not as invested in, for better or worse. I like a history book every once in a while. I'm not like picking this up on the daily, but I'm not opposed to reading something like this. I usually am excited to read whatever the winner is because I almost take it like a recommendation. And unfortunately, despite being intrigued by the winner for this category, I did not end up having a great time with it. If you don't know, the winner for the history and biography category was The Bookshop, A History of the American Bookstore by Evan Friss. It won with 38,847 votes, and it has an average rating of 3.98 on Goodreads. I had not read any of the nominees in this category, so I actually did not vote for this category. But I picked up the audiobook for this book right away, and started listening to it. I was very engaged at the beginning. I was engaged when it was kind of anecdotal, and talking about like a modern bookstore and people who work in this bookstore and things of that nature. And unfortunately, very, very quickly, we diverged from that into very random, sporadic accounts of different things in history relating to bookstores. I think that the best way to sum up my feelings is to say that for me, learning about a period of history really hinges on the author or storyteller's ability to string together different events to make it a cohesive narrative so that I understand how we got from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, and how it all has culminated into what we see today. Unfortunately, this book really, really did not do that. Its format was very much, here's a random time in history and some things that happened related to a bookstore, and then let's jump to a completely different topic on the way bookstores have influenced politics. And then let's jump to talking about how bookstores have helped the LGBTQ plus community. And then let's jump to something else. And unfortunately, that just really did not work for me. It just felt very random. I felt very disengaged with the material because of that, despite being interested in some of these movements that the author was talking about. Just it being so random. It being so random really, really harmed it instead of helped it in this case. I do think that this is a very timely book in the sense that the author talks a lot about how bookstores have always been political. Bookstores have always been places to protest, to advocate for human rights and certain political movements. And in a modern day where people want to so often take that out of the history of reading and literature, you can't. And because of that, I do think that this was a very timely book. I just think that, unfortunately, the execution of it was not what I would have hoped for. So I ended up giving it 3 stars. And as far as whether or not I think that it deserved to win, I feel very, very torn, actually, about it. But I'm going to say yes. I do think that it deserved to win just because of what I'm talking about. I think that it's just so timely and important to be discussing the bookstore as a medium for political movement. And I think that although the execution of this book was not my favorite and I don't think works on a larger scale, I do appreciate that it is being read, that it exists and that it is being read by people enough for it to kind of win a more mainstream type award like a Goodreads Choice Award. So I would say yes. The next category I'm going to talk about is the memoir category. If you know me, you know that I love a good memoir. I'm putting this category next because I just really did not feel very strongly about it one way or another. There were no books in this category that were nominated that I was like, this has to win. Like, I feel so strongly about this. Like, I just did not feel that way. And then I was also just not surprised at all to find that the third Gilmore Girl by Kelly Bishop was the winner. I think that this is a memoir that people want and that they've waited for. I am not surprised at all that it would win, again, kind of a mainstream award like this, and I'm happy for Kelly Bishop that she did win this. I think that that's really cool. I honestly do not remember what I voted for. I read a number of these. I read Toddler's Personal Assistant. I read The Manicurist's Daughter. I read Hereafter. I read I Shouldn't Be Telling You This. I read A House of Hidden Meanings. So I read a lot of these, but nothing really stood out as being like insanely good or moving for me. I was excited to listen to Kelly Bishop read her memoir, and she was great. It was great. There was nothing crazy one way or another. I don't know. I am a musical theater person, so I loved hearing about her journey that way, and like with a chorus line and just all of that stuff. That was really cool and interesting. I think that this is, again, a memoir that people want because people want to hear about her experience on Gilmore Girls, with that being such like a loved show. I don't think that it really dug too deep into anything that I wouldn't have expected. I think that it was just solid. I gave it 4 stars, and it won with 80,050 votes, and it sits at a 4.38 on Goodreads. And I'm just not surprised by that. There's really nothing else for me to say. So do I think that this deserved to win? Yes. I would say yes. Why not? It was good, and it was something that I feel like a lot of people have been waiting for. So 100%, girl, get it. Good job, Kelly Bishop. I love you, Kelly Bishop. Whew. Oh, man. Okay. So the next category is the last category that I would consider to be one of the boring categories. But funny enough, out of all of the categories, this is one of the ones that I think I might get the most fired up about, because I absolutely loathed this book. Okay, that is the nonfiction category, and the winner was The Anxious Generation: How the Great Rewiring of Childhood Caused an Epidemic of Mental Illness by Jonathan Haidt. This won with 39,553 votes and currently sits at a 4.38 on Goodreads. That is extremely disappointing for me to see. I gave it 1 star. I did not vote for this category. The only thing that I had read from this was All in Her Head. And I did not feel like I could vote for it because of some of the material. If you want to, you can go on my channel and look back at my reading wrap-up where I kind of call this author out a little bit. I did not feel good in my conscience voting for it, so I skipped voting for this category. I was intrigued by this book. I think that it's worth it to dive into topics like this of how technology is affecting young people. I am also a psychology student, particularly for children and adolescents. So this is right up my alley, right? Theoretically. And I have never read anything by this author. I scrolled through his other works and just was a little bit icked by what I was seeing as far as the other things that he has written, but I was trying to not be biased as I was going into this book. However, it really did not take long for me to just stare in bafflement at my phone and rage highlight a million things, especially in the beginning of this book. I will say that It got better as it went along, as far as it made me mad far less. This author posits the idea that Gen Z is so messed up because of technology. And I think that there is some merit to what he's saying, right? We can see the way that social media negatively influences people's body image. We can see the way that social media can lead to different pipelines for young men, or violence, or, whatever. That is not an unobserved fact in nature, right? However, I have an issue with a man who is going to read a variety of studies and try to then twist the studies and their findings to support his idea that social media is bad, right? Because it would be like he would look at a study that was like, young women report feeling less confident in their adolescent years. And then he would be like, and that's because of phones. And it's like, well, that's not what it says. Honestly, this book really just comes off as like an old, grouchy man kind of being like, back in my day, and also like, you're always on that damn phone. Like, that's really what it boils down to. I'm sorry, but it does. Especially considering that he like advocates for like kids being able to go out into the world like alone and unsupervised, and like complains for a whole portion of the book about how playground equipment is too safe. So just weird, very odd, like old man takes like that I just thought were very like odd and out of place. Also, as a Gen Z person who grew up pretty crunchy, I was homeschooled all growing up until 8th grade. I did not have a phone until I was like 13 or something. And I had like a slide phone when I was just, my point is that I was not exposed to social media just in this like completely unfettered and like unsupervised way that he seems to think all Gen Z were. That's not my experience whatsoever, but I do have diagnosed anxiety and depression that stems from before I was like exposed to all of these things. So while I think that there's some merit to what he's saying, I also just have to say, like, correlation does not equal causation, and there are a wide variety of factors that are influencing why people are more unhappy and less confident and have more issues. This author just really gave me the ick, and I feel like did not really write this book in the most genuine way. I find it a little bit disingenuous. I find it a little bit like he's writing this book just for people who already kind of believe the things that he's saying and who are going to read this and like use it to legitimize their narrative and use it to explain why their adolescent is having issues. And that's not a good reason for this book to exist and for people to read this book. If you are seeking this book because you think that you have like led your child astray, I guarantee that there's more issues than just you've let them be on social media too much, right? So yeah, I honestly could go on and on and on. I could make a whole video. This book really just made me mad. It was very crotchety. It was very disingenuous, so much untrue assumptions made. This man just wanted to harp on why like phones are bad for young women. And it's like, I don't know. I just can't really take that very seriously if you're not going to talk about it in a like actually good and nuanced way. So do I think this book deserved to win? 1,000% no. I just think that it was very ill-conceived. So that is what I have to say about that. I think I'm just going to kind of like move up on the list. I'm actually going like backwards, and I think that I'm just going to keep doing that because the next category is young adult fiction. This is not a category that I have a lot of stake in. The winner was Heartstopper Volume 5 by Alice Oseman, with 81,335 votes. It's sitting at a 4.48. That is wild. This book was fine. I have not read any of the other ones. I am not part of that universe, that fandom whatsoever. And really reading this book just solidified for me that it's just not for me. I just don't get it. And that's okay. That's 100% okay. I think that there is a huge audience for it. For me, as somebody who doesn't read a lot of romance, it just made me cringe. It was just like very cringy for me. And that's, that's okay. It's just, that's a me thing. I appreciate that this is a very beloved series. And I am so happy for those people who love this. I'm happy for the representation. It's just not for me. I think that it's hard to write about a gay relationship as a woman. So partially that I'm not a huge fan of. I want to read things written by people who actually have stake or experience in what they're writing about. I don't love that. But that's just me, and that's my opinion. Do I think that it deserved to win? I don't know. I actually don't even really know if I can say. Didn't really. The only two things that I read on this list were things that I did not like. So, I don't feel like I can say one way or another, actually, in this case. I would say yes, just for the culture, but I also don't think my opinion matters because I am not in it, and I also didn't like it. So, moving on. Young adult fantasy. Okay, I read Divine Rivals for the video last year. Was not going to read the second one. I was really just gonna look up spoilers. I'm glad that I never got around to it because obviously the winner for the young adult fantasy category was Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross with 93,230 votes. And it's sitting at a 4.01. I rated it 4 stars. I am actually glad that I ended up listening to this for this video. Because I actually like this one more than the first one. I think that just getting farther into the story, I had less issues with the setup. I think that I wasn't a huge fan of the insta love of the first book. But now that issue is out of the way for the second book, I had a good time listening to this. Something that is true for me about this book is that I love the world and the setting and the thought that goes into the world building and everything. I'm a huge fan of, and I love to see that because I think that unfortunately we see not great world building a lot of the time just in modern fantasy that's getting put out. And so I'm always going to give props for that. I loved the magic in this book. I really like this. I thought that it was a good way to wrap it up. I do think it wrapped up a little bit quickly, and it yet again kind of just surprises me that they tried to force this story into a duology instead of making it a trilogy. I do think it would have been stronger if it had been a trilogy. Do I think that it deserved to win? Personally, for me, I'm going to say no, because The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland was one of my top books from last year. It was a witchy, dark academia, found family type book that I just loved. It was even better than her first novel, and just very, very hype about that book. So it was definitely what I voted for. I'm sad that it is so far down on the list of votes. It only got 3,000 something. Yeah. But Ruthless Vows was good. I know that The Invocations was better. so I'm gonna have to say no for that category just for personal preference reasons. Okay, let's just tackle the friggin' audiobook and romance category, because if you didn't know, the winner for both of those was one and the same. It was Funny Story by Emily Henry. I have to say, I do think the audiobook category is a bit dumb. Because obviously people who have read any of these books, even if they didn't listen to the audiobook, are gonna vote anyway. And also I just don't find like physical reading and audiobooks to be that like different from each other to warrant a whole separate category. So I think that is a little silly. I also am not a huge fan of things being able to win for 2 categories or being nominated for multiple categories. I think that there's just too many good books that come out each year, and we shouldn't have to double up, right? So the fact that this was able to win this category is a little disappointing to me, even though I loved Funny Story, but I did vote for Funny Story, really for the purpose of I hadn't read any of the other ones. So, or I had read one, I guess, but I didn't really like it. So, yeah, speaking about it more in the romance category, I'm not surprised at all that it won. It won with almost 180,000 votes. And I'm not surprised. I am not surprised whatsoever because it was very good. I read Happy Place last year because that's what won last year. And I am not a romance person, but I did really like Happy Place. And I was like, well, I'm definitely going to be reading more Emily Henry now. I gave Happy Place 4 stars. I gave Funny Story 5 stars. I really, really liked this book. I listened to the audiobook. I really, really liked the audiobook. Something that I appreciate so much about Emily Henry, other than like the like character writing and like outside of the romance, right, is that I just love how she's able to make such believable small town feeling plots that are like, she's able to make stakes that feel like it would happen to a real person in a way that just feels very small town. It feels very like cozy to me, just like the whole part of this plot that has to do with the library and the event that she's doing for the library. It just feels very, very Hallmark, very cozy to me. And it's something that I really like. I like reading something that has like low stakes in the grand scheme of things, but that still has stakes in a way that makes it interesting and advances the plot. I like reading books that are not just like about the romance, I guess. I really appreciate Emily Henry for that. And I felt that come through a lot in this book. So I loved it. Do I think that it deserved to win? For romance, I would say yes. For audiobook, I'm going to say yes, except I think that category is dumb and I would like for it to be gone next year. Debut novel is the next category that I would like to talk about. The winner for that category was How to End a Love Story by Yulin Kwong. It won with 63,605 votes. I hate to see a romance winning debut category. I will not lie. That is just personal preference for me because I'm not a big romance reader. I'm not surprised at all that a romance would win for this category, considering it's like the most popular genre probably, other than like fantasy right now. So not surprising, but still disappointing. And I personally voted for We Used to Live Here by Marcus Klewer because that was one of my top books from last year and was just so wild that book was a debut. And I think that for me is what makes me vote for something as a debut novel, is whether or not it's like, wow, that's a debut. And like for me, We Used to Live Here definitely fit the bill for that category. I also was not a huge fan of this book, basically just for the premise. I will say I don't like that the winner of the debut category has a 3.66 average rating on Goodreads. I just think that's a little ridiculous. Like, that's a really low average rating, even compared to like the other categories. And I think to me just shows that this shouldn't have won. I know that that's kind of a strong opinion, but yeah, I think that the premise of this book was just a little bit off. If you don't know, it is the romance between two people that are essentially trauma bonded by the same accident that happened. I won't spoil it, but that's a little bit of an ill-conceived plot, and I'm happy to see that it's also rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. Sorry, my dog is like going to the bathroom and the cold air is coming in. It's making me cough. Yeah, definitely not my favorite. Something else I also just like really did not like is their romance was very cute, and I was like feeling it, like outside of the like issues with it. But then we would get to like anything spicy, and I just found it to be very like, I don't know how to explain it, like kind of graphic considering the surrounding interactions that they were having. Not graphic like it was too like detailed, like graphic in like the fact that like their interactions were very like wholesome and cutesy, and like their romance was blossoming in like a very like cute feeling way. And then we would get to like a spicy scene and they would just like really like snap into like these really like ways of like talking and acting. They did something like pretty like sexual before ever having even kissed. And it was like in public, like at this like party. Like, I don't know. It ruined it. It took me out of it a little bit because it just felt like very like graphic kind of. And I was like, whoa, like you guys are like, you're like this like cute, wholesome pairing. And then all of a sudden there's like this, it's just whoa for me. I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense at all or if anyone else felt that way. It might just be me being insane, but that was also something I just like really did not like about it that very much. So do I think it deserved to win? I think the answer is pretty obviously no. I think that there were a lot of good things on this list that I would have liked to see win in place of this. And that's just my personal opinion. But I also think that a 3.66 average rating means that I might be correct. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I feel weird about this one. It's just an odd one. Oh my God. Moving on to the horror category. I am so sick. Okay. And I'm going to ruffle some feathers. All right. If you watched my video last year, you know that I had to read Holly because Holly won. And you know, and I stand by, even today, I continue to stand by the fact that that was not a horror book. It was not. It was basically a Criminal Minds episode, but like extremely political. And, you know, Stephen King's political views are not even something that I like don't align with. And I still am icked by how much and the way that he talks about it in his books because it's so much. I honestly just feel like this man needs to pivot because when I saw that You Like It Darker by Stephen King won for the horror category, I was livid. Just knowing that because of y'all, I have to read another Stephen King book, okay? It won with 60,901 votes, and the average rating for it is a 4.24. Ridiculous. I gave it a 2. And you know what? The reason that it is a 2 is because it is not a horror book. I don't care. Okay, listen. Stephen King is a great writer. I truly do believe that he has mastered the craft of writing. He has mastered the craft of writing a compelling, like well-written short story, okay, or novel, or whatever. I don't care. It doesn't even matter. But this man's well is dry when it comes to horror, when it comes to horror ideas. I wish that this man would just pivot and write in a different genre. I'm so serious, if he did a massive 180 and wrote a freaking book of essays, like a John Green, the Anthropocene reviewed type book of essays, actually like talking about the things that he wants to talk about, like politics and stuff like that, I would 100% give it a try. But the fact that I am being forced to read these books that are not horror and it have won a horror award is so infuriating to me. Please, I am begging for people to stop voting for him just because it's Stephen King and you think that it's like a horror. Literally one singular short story in this god forsakenly long collection of short stories was a horror short story. Okay? Sorry for saying short story so many times in such a little amount of time. But please, like there was one that had to do with anything creepy. Most of them were just like sort of speculative, there was like a crime drama like in the middle of it. Like it was just, oh my God, it was so bad. And I only gave it a 2 because it's well written and I appreciate him for that. Okay. I appreciate that at least he's not a writer, but I can't take it seriously for him to keep winning the horror awards for these weak plots. I can't. I read a lot of these that were on this list, obviously, but I voted for We Used to Live Here because it was, again, one of my favorite books from last year, and it was really good. I will stand by that it 100% deserved to win. So do I think that As You Like It Darker or whatever it's called deserved to win? No, it did not. It didn't. I can objectively say, no, it did not deserve to win. And that is what I have to say about that. Please, I am begging for Stephen King stans to like actually read other things and realize that like just because it's written by Stephen King does not automatically make it horror and does not automatically mean that it is good. Because some of those short stories were bad. The next category is science fiction. I feel like I need to just get it out of the way because it is probably the category that I feel the most strongly about. If you are unaware of why that may be, you can watch my end of the year wrap up video and watch me literally cry on camera talking about what was my top book from last year and what truly has become one of my favorite books of all time. And that was I Cheerfully Refuse, which is the book that I obviously voted for. I am pleasantly surprised to see that it received 11,757 votes. As I have said before, the thing that is very lamentable about I Cheerfully Refuse to me is that I don't think that it's going to be widely popular. I had to take a little break because both my batteries were dead. So hopefully this one holds up, but we'll see. I don't want to talk about I Cheerfully Refuse too much because I have talked about it a lot on my channel. And I also tend to get very emotional when I talk about it. So I will just say, literally a book that changed my life. And one of my favorite books ever of all time. I own it. I have a copy of it now. Just extremely poignant, and I would encourage anybody to read it if you are even generally curious about it. But because that was my favorite, you know, anything but that to win for this category is going to be a no from me. I actually only read one of the other things that ended up being on this list, and that was Annie Bot, which I really did not like. If you're curious about that, you can go watch my rant review. It's very long. But the winner was The Ministry of Time by Kalian Bradley. I don't know how to say her name. With 78,459 votes. Once again, this book has an average rating of 3.61. That is just very low to me to win for a whole category. The next thing after that, The Family Experiment, has a 4.07. And I'm not saying that it should just come down to like average rating, but I just have a hard time thinking, yeah, this thing should have won when it's like the general consensus of the reviews are not even that great for it, you know? And personally, for me, I gave this book 2 stars. I think that it was just very confused. There were moments in the writing when the author was talking about things like identity that I thought were very good and poignant. But as a whole, the concept, I think, ended up really just not working. The plot was also so unfocused. So many things happened, but also like kind of nothing happened. And just, I don't know how to explain it other than to say that the style of writing, it just felt like there was this miasma like over the book, and I could not penetrate to the meaning of the words a lot of the time. Like I was confused. it's just written in a particular way that I just found very confusing. Like, there was this one part I remember where the one character said to the other character, like she was asking her for like a clarifying question or something, and the other character was like, well, you already know. And it's like, no, I don't. Like, no, I don't. Okay. Just the concept of, you know, this being like a real man that this author like brought back to life, like in this book, to like have a romance with the main character, is just a little bit ethically uncomfy to me, especially when you're going to be writing like legitimate, like spicy scenes, which also felt very awkward to read. Just the way that they were written as well was very awkward to me. So I really found this book to be a really big miss, and I genuinely believe that the only reason that it won is because I saw its cover everywhere last year. And I think that that is true for a lot of other people too. They saw it everywhere, so they did read it, and then that's like the only thing that they read in this category, so they voted for it. I think that it was just the everywhere effect, like for the marketing, and like everybody just knows about this book and knows the cover of this book, and it's a great cover, but you know what's inside, I just did not think was very good. So I'm disappointed that this is the thing that won. I would have been much happier reading probably anything else on this list that's not Annie Bot. So did it deserve to win? I would say absolutely not. Not when I know that there are such amazing things on the nominees, and not when I think it was bad. So my biggest takeaway from that is please go read I Cheerfully Refuse, and that is basically, that's it. Somewhere Beyond the Sea by TJ Klune was the winner for the fantasy category with 69,854 votes. It has a 4.2 rating on Goodreads. I ended up rating it a 4. This is the sequel to what was his first book. This is something that I wouldn't have expected to get a sequel. I kind of have not been as interested in TJ Klune's books after that last like robot one, the In the Lives of Puppets that won last year. I just did not think was very good. And then I have not been interested in his like Wolf Song like series or whatever. The fact that there's like multiple of those, like this man writes so much. The fact that that's like a whole series, just insane. I picked this up. I was honestly very not excited to read it, but I do think that it ended up having a lot of the TJ Klune magic that I was missing from like In the Lives of Puppets, for example. So I ended up giving this 4 stars. I was happy to revisit these characters, and I think that it was much more what I expected from him before In the Lives of Puppets. And definitely tugged on my heartstrings. I love like, you know, cozy fantasy books that are going to do that, and it definitely did. A lot of the writing is very like silly and unserious still, and that's okay. That's like his thing, and I think that has like an audience and a time and a place, and I thought it was good. I absolutely love and respect and adore that he directly called out J.K. Rowling in the acknowledgments of this book. If you don't know that, go take a peek. It is wild, and I definitely greatly admire him for that. So overall, I was pleasantly surprised by my experience with this book, considering that it was something I was so not looking forward to. Personally, I voted for A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. I read quite a few things actually that were on this list, and 2 of my favorites from last year were A Sorceress Comes to Call and also When Among Crows by Veronica Roth. But I just loved A Sorceress Comes to Call so much, so I did vote for that. So do I think that it deserved to win? I actually have to say no. I have to say no. I think that there were some really amazing things that were nominated for last year. The Familiar was amazing. There were some really solid things on this list. Some of my top books from last year. So I have a hard time saying that this should have won when it is like a sequel that I don't think that we were ever originally supposed to get, unless like the book had extreme commercial success, which it did. That just kind of, takes me out of it a little bit. So even though I had a really good personal experience reading the book, more than I expected to, just like as a whole, I just can't say yes. The romantasy category is next. And the winner was House of Flame and Shadow by Sarah J. Maas, which won with 122,895 votes, was the third book in this Crescent City series. I read a lot of Sarah J. Maas when I was getting back into reading. I have not picked up any of these Crescent City books. So I will be very honest. As of the filming of this video, I have not read the third one. And that was because I can't get the freaking book from the library. So I read the first one. I'm basing my review off of the first one, which I know is not fair because I know the third one is like actually very different from the first one apparently. But all that being said, I was not very interested in this series, and then I loved it. I'm sorry. Like I know there's so much like valid criticism of Sarah J. Maas, but I just like, I can't even lie. Like, I have never had a bad experience with one of her books. I haven't. And like, this is like the romantasy that I love to see, right? Because there's still fantasy. And I think that that is like what I like so much about Sarah J. Maas is like, she really does toe the line between the two genres. It's where I think so much of the time it tends to fall so heavily into romance at the expense of the world building. Like, Sarah J. Maas is going to build that world. I'll be honest, I was actually a little disengaged at the beginning of the novel because there was so much like info dumping about like the world and stuff. And I really didn't know what to expect from this book either. So I was very like, whoa, like I can't believe this is what this book is, right? But I will not even lie. The way that she just wraps up like every storyline into each other and like has such a developed plot while still managing to focus so much on the romance. Like, I was not expecting to freaking cry like towards the end of this book. Like, if you had told me that I was going to love this book, give it 5 stars, and cry as I'm listening to the like audiobook, like I would not have believed you. But like, that is what happened. Just basing it off of the first book, my opinion of the series might be subject to change depending on how the other books go. But I don't even care. I ate it up and it was so good. And I don't even care. So do I think that it deserved to win? I would have to say yes. There was only one other thing that I had, three other things that I had read. A Dark and Drowning Tine I did not like very much. I read The Honey Witch. I did not love that, but it wasn't awful. I voted for The Spell Shop, which was just a cozy fantasy book. Other than that, I haven't read any of these, but I do think it deserved to win based on the other things that I read from the category that I was just like, meh, I actually really actively liked this. So, yeah, I don't even care. I do not even care. I'm standing with Sarah J. Maas on this, like, which is crazy to say, because usually I'm a hater, but down to 3 more categories. We can do it. Mystery and thriller. I'll be honest, I don't have a lot to say, because the winner was The God of the Woods, which was very predictable. I think that this was the only category that I accurately predicted what was going to win. The God of the Woods is by Liz Moore. It won with 82,603 votes. I gave it 4 stars last year when I listened to it, and it's sitting at a 4.17. Not surprising. This was very popular last year, which I think is amazing, because I am a huge mystery and thriller reader. I love mystery and thriller. I have read maybe the most mystery and thriller out of all the genres in the past couple of years as I've been back into reading. So I was very interested in this book because it was getting such widespread popularity. And I will be honest, I was not mind blown as much as I think that a lot of other people were. I attribute that to the fact that I read so much of this genre. And I love the fact that this book seems to have been a gateway for more people getting into this genre. I think that that is great. I will say, to this book's credit, even though it did not absolutely blow me away, I do appreciate something winning for this category that is this well written and well thought through. I think that it feels very literary for it being a thriller. And I really like that. I like seeing something win for this category that is not like Frida McFadden, and that is like actually good and that wraps up well and that is thought through. So do I think that this book deserved to win? I would say yes. I voted for Rachel Hawkins, The Heiress, because I thought that was her best book by far. So that was my vote personally. But yeah, there were a lot of good ones in this category, but I'm not surprised at all that this won. And I think that it deserves to, because not only was it so popular, but it is like a very solid book. So, oh gosh. Okay, well, I'm glad I'm ending this video on a positive. But before we get to that, I do have to, unfortunately, talk about a negative. Historical fiction, for me, was a huge miss. The winner was The Women by Kristen Hanna, with 253,147 votes. Sorry, that number shocked me so much I forgot how to say numbers. This book has an average rating of 4.62. That is insane. I gave it a 3. I did not like her other book really that much, The Four Winds or whatever. I just found it to be kind of bleak and boring. So I was not excited to read this at all, and was even more disappointed when it did not exceed my expectations in any way. I gave it 3 stars, but I would say it probably sits more at like a 2.5 for me. I was very into it when I started the audiobook. I actually thought that it was going to be an instance where I was like, oh, this is actually good. But very, very quickly, this book just devolves into being basically just white woman trauma. And I'm sorry to put it that bluntly. This has 1 million freaking ratings. I know that I'm in the minority for this, apparently. But the fact that this book is about the Vietnam War and the entire book centers around one upper class white woman that comes from a rich family and that went and was a nurse at the front lines or whatever of the Vietnam War. But the fact that we learn nothing about Vietnam, like nothing about the war, nothing about any other nurses, we singularly get the perspective of this one rich girl who, yes, of course, had a hard time, obviously, just being a war nurse and then coming home and dealing with PTSD. Not to like trivialize that at all, but imagine how much harder it is for a nurse who was a woman of color during this time period and who did not have the resources that our main character was afforded. So for this main character to have been as unbelievably whiny and ungrateful and ridiculous as she was, it just really pissed me off. I was like, you have it the best out of so many of these other people who were affected by the war. Like, really, in the grand scheme of things. Not that it is not awful for her to, like, you know, be ostracized and experience the things that she's experienced. I'm not saying that, but just for there to be so little intersectionality in this discussion about, like, the nurses in the Vietnam War, and, like, to solely hear from a woman who would have had it like the best out of any of those people is just extremely frustrating to me. It's also just very, very frustrating that so much of this book ends up just revolving around her different romances. And why I say that it's like trauma porn is because literally, the plot just devolves into, oh my God, things are finally maybe going good, except something bad happens. And then, oh my God, wait, he's actually alive and not dead, but he has a wife. And then, oh my God, I'm actually maybe like doing better after I like crashed my car, but like then something worse happens. And it's literally like, that's the whole plot of this book. It's just over and over again, these awful things happening to this woman that's just like supposed to be like kind of farming you for feelings. And I really, really hate that. I really, really hate it. I think that it's very readable. I think that it had so much potential, but it just really dropped the ball in a way that is very disheartening to me. I think that it's actually bad. Like, do I think that it deserved to win? 100% no. In a time where I want to be hearing from people who have not had a voice, from when I want to be hearing about pockets of history that have been erased or oppressed. That is what I want in my historical fiction. I do not want a rich white girl complaining after she made the decision to go, be a nurse for the front lines. Like, there was nothing forcing her to that point. Like, I don't know. I have trouble taking it seriously, and I think that that's all I have to say. I'm sorry that I feel so negatively, but I think that it just, I have to stand my ground on it because it just gives me the ick. All that being said, I am very happy to end on a positive note because the last category was fiction. And the winner for this category for 2024 was The Wedding People by Alison Esbosh. I have zero idea how to say that. I don't think I've even looked at her last name until now. But it won with 94,733 votes, and it is sitting at a 4.16. I honestly don't remember what I voted for. I think Blue Sisters by Coco Malors, because I liked that. But yeah, okay. I am dumb because I was under the impression for some reason that this was a romance book. In all of my time seeing this cover last year, as it was at my library, at the bookstore, online, whatever, I thought there were two people holding their hands out of the water, and I just assumed that it was a romance because of that. Silly of me, really. I was disappointed that a romance won for this category, only to then open up this audiobook and find that I was very wrong. And it has elements of romance, but it is much more kind of an exploration of this like one woman's life. And it's about the deterioration of her marriage and how she got to the point that she's currently at when she's going to this hotel and she is feeling suicidal. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube, so I don't know how I'm going to deal with that or bleep it out or whatever. But she's having suicidal feelings, so much so that she is planning to commit over this weekend, but there ends up being a wedding happening, and the bride is just having none of that at her wedding weekend. And we just, it just unfolds, and we learn so much about these characters and stuff, and the way that their like relationships pan out and everything, I think was really, it definitely exceeded my expectations. I think that it kind of reminds me of like Sally Rooney in the sense of, I think that this author is able to articulate parts of the human experience that are not always articulated or thought through, but that I think a lot of people can resonate with. And that's something that I really like in a book and that I really appreciate. So that was a big plus for me. It was kind of weird that, like, random personal anecdote, and you can skip if you want to, but I, over the holidays, got stuck in San Diego trying to get back for Christmas. The San Diego airport, if you are aware or not aware, was literally like a disaster zone because of unexpected fog and then obviously mass amounts of like holiday travel going on. I mean, I was in lines that lasted for 4 hours long. I was in lines that were wrapping around the building. They were having to shut things down because there were too many people, but like they could just not get planes out on time or at all. I got stuck there for 4 extra days. It was a nightmare. I spent one of the days having been there for like 12 hours, like sitting on the floor with my carry-on bag, like, you know, trying to find like an outlet to charge my phone because my phone's going to die. I'm in this unfamiliar city by myself. Like it's, you know, it was really crazy. And I had this really strangely deep interaction and conversation with this like man who just like randomly sat down beside me. And we just had this like utterly bizarre, like it had no business being as deep of a conversation, like us being two strangers in this like extremely stressful environment. And we ended up like just like deciding to like leave the conversation at that. Like we didn't exchange like numbers or Instagrams or anything like intentionally, because it was just such a strange conversation, and it felt necessary to kind of just like leave it here in this space. So then this book winning for this category, listening to the audiobook, when she goes into the hot tub for the first time and says something about how, that's the gift that strangers can give you, is kind of being able to say anything to them. And I had just had such a strange personal experience where I found that sentiment that was then in this book to be so relatable and true. And this book, for it being centering around some really difficult topics, it warmed me, I feel like. It is a great way that I can explain it. I think that it really felt like human connection. And I liked it a lot because of that. I know that some people do not like the way that suicide was talked about in this book, and kind of the callous way that the main character talks about, her feelings surrounding that, and then how the other characters interact with her because of it. I totally get why some people don't like it. I will say though, as somebody who in my own life has experienced bouts of these thoughts and like feeling that way, I found it to be like very, very accurate to my own experience and how I coped with the times in my life that felt like that. So I think that it's unfair a little bit to discount it because of that, because I think that that is a very real way that a lot of people experience the topic of suicide. So while I understand why it rubs people the wrong way, what if they maybe have like not ever experienced that, or had somebody close to them who experienced that, or if they've experienced that themselves but not in this way, I can understand where it's like not for everybody. But I was refreshed actually to see somebody talking about it in kind of such a callous way, because I feel like that has been my own experience with it. So I think that is really all I have to say. I ended up giving it, I think, 4.5. Oh, I rated it a 5. I think that it was like a 4.5 for me. Definitely was not what I expected, and I'm happy for that. So, do I think that it deserved to win? I would say yes. I don't see why not. I think that it makes sense that it won. And those are the Goodreads winners of 2024. As you can see, there were some gems, there were some positive feelings, there were also some extremely negative ones, but I hope you can kind of also see what I mean by it just kind of fell a little bit flat. Like there was just nothing that I feel like really stood out in any particular way, honestly. And as disappointing as that is, I am happy to do this always. I will vote and read the winners next year. I love doing it. I just have fun, okay? Please let me know what you thought, what you voted for, if you voted for any of the same things that I did, if you disagree with any of my takes. I would love to hear about it. Like I said, you can always find my social medias in the description. I would love to interact with more people on there to like get me to actually do it. Regardless, I will be back again next month. I am debating about what my video is going to be, but I think it might be another reading vlog. We shall see. Yeah, thank you so much for sticking with me. If you are here this long, up until this point, you are amazing. Love you. Thank you for chatting about books with me. Thank you for supporting my channel. 100 subscribers. Crazy. And yeah, I think I will see you in March. Bye.